but we certainly can. We have a quorum.
Okay,
Hold on, let me unmute us.
go ahead and open the work session of the San Juan County Commission regarding the ordinance, San Juan County ordinance. Rules and procedure and bylaws for the San Juan County Planning Commission.
Okay.
We have a letter from Mr. Maryboy, Commissioner Maryboy, stating some reasons. Mainly, I guess, it was tabled by motion. Mr. Maryboy tabled the items. Now it's back before us for work session. Apparently, the concerns that are placed on this issue is transparency and regarding applications that were submitted. I assume before the deadline, they were not included in the interview process. So that's the main argument. With that, we'll go ahead and hear any recommendations that might change the existing ordinance. Do you have anything, Mr. Madong?
Yeah, let me go through and just for clarity, I'll take you through our entire process. In the bylaws, it states in there that, that we will begin advertising for vacant seats of the Planning Commission. We begin that process in November. That process did, in fact, begin in November. The requirement in the bylaws has that there's a notification placed in the newspaper around December, and I began that process back in November 17th. The process that I kind of took it through a little bit more than what is required in the bylaws. We have multiple boards that have vacancies, and so in an effort to try to save money, I put all of those and have for the past couple of years all of the advertisements in one notification going out. And so you can see on your screens here where I notified vacancies that were on San Juan Counseling Board, San Juan Public Health Board, the Planning Commission, as well as the Eastland Special Service District. This, like I mentioned, is kind of all in an effort to save money. There was one of the boards that held up the advertisement, and so the notification for the newspaper didn't go in until December 10th. And so that was kind of what the delay was. The date kind of arbitrary. When we get this notification in the newspaper, we did have in the newspaper, it stated down at the bottom, the deadline to apply is 5 p.m. December 31st or until the positions are filled. And so I kind of left it open-ended. This is typical here in San Juan County. I found by advertising at length of all of our boards, a little bit more success in letters of interest from the public. It's a bigger advertisement instead of just a small newspaper article that people would miss. This is it's a lot bigger in the newspaper, so people tend to see more. And then where all of the boards are all inclusive on here, it makes it a little bit easier for the public to find. But like I mentioned, people wanted grandma this, and grandma requests my email. It shows that I actually started this effort back in November. It's just the timing and getting everything put together from the other boards out of our control type thing. And so one of the suggestions on there was, well, let's begin this process back in October instead of December. Like I say, that date is kind of arbitrary when you have an open-ended deadline like we do in HARES. We'll take, even as of today, people can continue to apply. We haven't filled those vacancies. And so it continues technically to be open vacancies on those positions. And so that kind of gets you into the advertisement. What we did receive, as we did advertise for, there were 3 vacancies for the Planning Commission. One was Bluff. And then we had an at-large position, and then we had the Spanish Valley position. And here you kind of see an error where I had the one representing and residing in Monticello. It was actually the Bluff, Spanish Valley, and the county at-large positions that were open. So we had 3 vacancies. One, the Bluff was probably the most difficult to receive any letters of interest. And so of those that we did receive, we received 5 letters of interest for basically the 2 positions, for the at-large and then your Spanish Valley positions. And out of 5, we felt that was enough to go ahead and schedule interviews. And so I'd worked with Anne Marie. Anne Marie had scheduled the interviews of those 5 candidates. After we had scheduled interviews, and there was some timing that we had to work with one of the interviewees or interviewers, as one of the interviewers had an afternoon meeting that they had to leave to. And so we had a window that we had to make all of these interview schedules in. So we were able to meet that. Scheduled for the date, let me check and see. The date I had that we scheduled the interviews was January 19th. On the 16th, we received another letter of interest that came in on a Sunday. Monday was a holiday, so really we would have one day to set up an interview with this individual, which we did not. We just kept knowing that we had 5 candidates that met the qualifications. We went ahead and continued with interviews and didn't invite this other candidate to the interview. Let me go real quick to the bylaws and show you, because this is one of the issues that was brought up. So candidate qualifications. In here, in the bylaws, it states the candidate qualifications. So commission candidates shall be a resident, a registered voter of San Juan County with experience or knowledge in land use, knowledge of county and local issues, a good listener, ability to communicate, and be analytical. So we had in the advertisement placed that as a requirement to be qualified. When you look at state code, so state code, because there's a question on, well, county, you're not meeting state code. Well, no, we are meeting state code. In state code, so it's section 17-27A-301. This is the county's land use ordinance, or not ordinance, the code, state code. So in here it states that members shall serve 4-year terms and until their successors are appointed and qualified. So in here, it doesn't go through and mention what is qualified. It does mention in here, each member of the advisory area planning commission shall be a registered voter residing within the planning advisory area. So we do make sure that the planning commissioners are, or anybody applying for that, are a registered voter, that they reside within San Juan County and specific to the areas that we have listed in the bylaws. Now, it does point out qualified. Well, what is qualified? It doesn't give any criteria other than that they be a resident and registered voter as being qualified. When we drafted the bylaw, well, when we took and adjusted the bylaws, it was mentioned that these were taken from Grand County. I don't know what the source was at the time that the planning director pulled these from, but we did make modifications to the qualified portion and added more language. Now, know that in law, and the way that it's structured, you have state code that could be the minimum requirements that you have to have. But as a county ordinance, you can go beyond that and you can have more. You can have more requirements than what state code. You can't have less than what state code allows. So when I mentioned qualified in here, we looked at it and it's kind of best practices out there. And, there's been some research from the public that looked at other counties and what is qualified. Also, one of the things to look at is some of the cities that what do they require, but it's also important to look at San Juan County itself and what does San Juan County need? What can best help our planning commission, especially as an advisory role to the commissioners? So as I looked at that whole entire picture and looking at qualifications, it's like, well, what do we need here? What is best for the board? It's kind of common best practices. When you look at land use planning and the art of planning commission maintenance, this is one of the articles that we look at. This is to help empower local governments. One of the things that it mentions in here is selecting the right people. It's like when advertising for volunteers for appointments, what do you look for? Some look for technical experience in urban planning, real estate, and architecture, while others look at the length of residency and community involvement with community affairs and experience in working well with the group setting. Now, mind you, so we have that same language in here. Some are looking for experience in urban planning, real estate, and architecture. So that in our bylaws, going back to the qualifications, knowledge in land use, knowledge of county local issues. So we have kind of that replicated, those best practices out there. Thinking back to when I was first hired on here, you had just enacted a moratorium for land use issues in Spanish Valley, where it was in an effort to try to prevent a developer from developing property in Spanish Valley, and placed a moratorium, 6-month moratorium on any development, any new applications that come in to develop. And also you were going through this Spanish Valley modification of ordinances within that area. So a lot of chaos and contention, a lot of confusion on applications and vestiture. When is an applicant vested? Are they vested at the time they submit a check to the county? Is it the time when they make an application for this land use? So a lot of chaos and contention in our planning system. Did they fill out the proper form? Why was the check written out to Grand County? A lot of questions and concerns in there. And so we'd seen this qualification as an opportunity to strengthen the planning commission. We wanted planning commission members that understood land use. So that's why you see that reflected in this is an effort to try to strengthen the advice and recommendations that you get from an advisory board to help you as commissioners out to make better decisions. The output that the stronger the output that they can give, and advice and recommendations that they can give to you as a body, makes your decision-making ability a lot stronger as commissioners. So it made sense for us as staff to have this language in there, and this is kind of common, may not be common with the commission and the research is done, or the counties and the research is done. But when you look at San Juan County and what our needs, the chaos and contention, the drafting of or the approval of draft ordinances instead of actual final ordinances that have gone through the Planning Commission, a lot of mistrust in between the commission, the Planning Commission, and the public and the Planning Commission, and all of this was an effort to strengthen that, bolster that back up. And so those were the candidates that we received. We received the 5 that met those qualifications, that were in some form of land use experience, whether it's an architect, engineer, planner, we didn't care, but those that we had interviewed were specifically for that. Those 5 candidates could meet those qualifications. We did receive 2 other applicants that were deemed non-qualifying applicants, and then you had this late application for Planning Commission. So 3 that were outside of that, 5 that we interviewed. At the time we interviewed, kind of my efforts is I never leave anything on the table, because I don't want to ever be accused of hiding anything. So we did form in here, it mentions when you go through interviews, we did form a committee to go through these interviews. Commissioner Gray Eyes was the commission representative of that. In here also, it suggests having a Planning Commission member be a part of the interview process. The 2, the chair and the vice chair, are both candidates for renewal and extending their terms. And so I couldn't have the chair and the vice chair be a part of the committee to review and their own interviews. And then we did reach out to another Planning Commission member to be a part of that interview. He never responded. We continued forward with just staff and Commissioner Gray Eyes to go through and interview those candidates. When we met as a committee to review and interview those candidates, at that time I pointed out that we did have 2 that were unqualified. I explained why they were unqualified, as well as I pointed out that, hey, we also received this late application, and posed that question. It's like, we can interview them. It's up to you guys, whatever. I just wanted to be transparent with the selection committee that, hey, we had these 2 that were non-qualifying. I explained why I felt that they were non-qualifying. Then I also showed them, hey, we have this late application that actually does qualify, but here's the concerns with that. We weren't able to get it scheduled as an interview, but if you want, we can. And I left that up to the committee. It's like, we can later interview this individual if you want. So we left it at that and proceeded with interviews, selections, and ranking. And that is what you see before you, or at the commission meeting. Those were the recommendations that we had received, and it was to reappoint Trent. Trent is he fills an at-large position here locally. He is a returning commissioner. He's been on the commission multiple years. Also, Lloyd. It was recommended to reappoint Lloyd. And then a new one was Sheikh Han, who is a resident of Spanish Valley. Those were the recommendations out of the 5. Those 3 were recommended to either go back onto the Planning Commission or be appointed as a new member. When you look at on here in the terms of office, this is one point of contention that some have is, do we continue to allow people that have been on the Planning Commission to come back and renew for an additional term? Well, in our bylaws, we do allow for that. Understanding that Lloyd and Trent have been on the Planning Commission for multiple years. Even before this, I felt that, and I explained during the selection process, that it doesn't make sense to all of a sudden impose rules and then kick them off because so in essence, penalizing them for being previous planning commissioners. So here we come in, enact new set of rules, and it doesn't apply to them because they've been existing planning commissioners. So we felt that that was right. And so new rules, new terms, everything else. And so we felt that because of that, because these rules have come in during their terms, that they both qualified for an additional 4-year term. And so we proceeded with that. I would suggest continuing to keep this language in there. You have allowed other boards and board members to sit on boards. I mean, we've got one that has been on a board for 20 years. And so if we're allowing this on other boards, I don't know why we wouldn't allow a commissioner or a board member to renew their term if allowed. So this allows you to be able, as a planning commissioner, that they can renew for one additional 4-year term. So 8 years is what you can serve on the planning commission once these rules were put into place. So that's kind of the term. One of the other concerns is your members. It says the commission shall consist of 7 members who shall be appointed by the Board of Commissioners, 1 member from Blanding, 1 member from Monticello, 1 member from Bluff, 1 member from LaSalle, 1 member from Spanish Valley area, 1 member from the Special Service District in the county, and 1 member at large. And that's been similar to how we've operated in the past on the Planning Commission. This is also similar to how we operate in other boards, whether it's our tourism or economic development, public health. We try to do this as well to make sure that we have a broad range and representative from each area of the county. There's a suggestion that we take this out and allow for any member in the county. I would highly go against that thought. And here's the reason why. By having each representative area in here, each area has representation when they're making their land use, developing ordinances, looking at the overall planning operations here in San Juan County. But each area has that representation. Each area has somebody that can speak to the familiarity of that area and specific issues that are there. By opening this up to all at large, I would be super, super concerned, not necessarily with this commission, but possibility commissions in the future where I could stack a planning commission full of all Blanding residents, and it would allow for that. It would allow for me to stack all Pack Creek or Spanish Valley residents in a planning commission. And so you lose kind of that equal representation throughout here. And so I would highly suggest that we don't mess with this, but there is one that people are like, well, Mac, why do you have somebody in there from the Special Service District? Since my 2 years here, I've noticed time and time again that we get into this concern of water and sewer. Well, who knows water and sewer best than somebody from the Special Service District that works and operates a water system? They know that type of a system best. They know the concerns. And so we're hoping that individual in a planning commission sense can give the proper advice when you receive a application, say, for example, in Spanish Valley. Let's just say a hypothetical that a hotel is proposed in a commercial zone in Spanish Valley. Well, if you have somebody from the Special Service District that can address water concerns, that knows the water concerns and knows the water issues, then that discussion takes place at that level. they're looking at, if we have in our zoning ordinance water conservancy and water conservancy measures in our planning ordinances, they know to look for that, and they understand the water operations behind it and can give us better advice as a commission body on how to treat that. And so knowing that we have all of these water concerns, a lack of water, or is there too much water in our areas, that's why we have that special service district member sitting there. We're hoping that, and it kind of goes back to that same article, is making sure that we have the right people on this board. We know that we have water concerns all throughout this county. So that's why we have that specific person there that can meet and represent the water issues surrounding that. I mentioned Bluff in here. When you look at Bluff, there's probably, there is a concern about Bluff. You heard it as we went to reappoint the current member of Bluff. That individual hasn't been attending meetings. She'd been out of state in another state. Small band of wireless services, maxed out on the data that is available in Alaska, so could not attend all the meetings. Meeting attendance, and it's probably something that falls on staff, as we should have probably been a little bit more diligent in making sure that individuals attend their meetings, and if they do not attend, then we're on their case to make sure that they are in attendance. She did call in several times. She tried to connect to the internet, runs out of data, and so that was a concern. She had originally asked to renew her position. At the time, we had not received any new letters of interest out of Bluff. And so we pushed her name forward. At the same time, as we push out the packet, we had received letters of interest from Bluff and a concern from the Bluff mayor about her attendance and that representation. She has since, because of kind of all of the fallout, has withdrawn her name from Bluff. And so we do have that vacancy that continues there, as well as, I believe it's 3 letters of interest for that position in Bluff. But because of kind of some of the comments, she's like, yeah, I'm done. She no longer wants to represent Bluff. She's kind of worried about her business there in Bluff and kind of how it impacts everything, and her ability to sustain a living in both places, whether it's Bluff or Alaska, and continue to be on the Planning Commission. When you look at, let me try to find it here, making sure that I cover everything on. When you look at the faithful attendance and performance, in here it states, should circumstances arise where a planning commission member is unable to attend a scheduled meeting, the member shall be responsible for notifying the chair and building and zoning department staff as soon as possible. If circumstances prevent faithful attendance and performance of planning commission members' duties, the member should resign from planning commission. This did not take place. She didn't obviously resign. She just continued. But I think this is kind of where staff should have stepped in and said, hey, what's going on? It shouldn't be the responsibility of the chair of the planning commission. Kind of should have been us to reach out and say, hey, you're not attending your meeting, and rightfully so. However, in here, there is no statement similar to how there is on commission members. It doesn't state how many meetings you can miss. Whether it's 2 meetings, 5 meetings, 20 meetings in a year. It doesn't state that. It just says if you can't make it, you need to resign. So I think of all, that language there would need to be strengthened to kind of help avoid what we have. But like I said, after the last planning commission, she had sent me an email notifying that she did not want to continue her term. But between the commission meeting and that time, like I said, I believe I have 3 letters of interest to fill that Bluff vacancy there. So let me go back through here and make sure that I've hit kind of everything that I wanted to touch on with our bylaws. Members, terms of office, candidate interest, qualifications. The interview process is pretty clear. Where we had the commission, faithful attendance I touched on. So that's kind of where we're at on everything here. Process going forward. Like I said, I've kept this open. It still continues to be open today. I don't know if there's specific changes in here, commissioners, that you feel that needs to be made. There was the directive from Commissioner Maryboy, propose some drafts to the changes. For me personally, I don't recognize any changes that I would necessarily make requiring an amendment to the ordinance through here. Like I say, I think I've tried to give a pretty good explanation of why we have things the way they are, especially knowing, when you look at it in comparison with other counties, I think it's important to note, other than probably Morgan County, who has a major development, not a lot of the counties have major developments outside of cities and annexed areas like we do here in San Juan County. The potential for Spanish Valley development, to me, should require us and want to make sure that our planning commissioners are fully aware of land use and completely understandable of land use issues that you get from architects, engineers, developers, contractors, people that work in that type of industry. And I completely understand the argument on the outside as well. I can study that and I can get trained that if I'm just a regular member of the public. Say if I have a degree in a law degree, then I can easily read through ordinances and establish ordinances. I don't necessarily have to be in land use to be on the planning commission. I can develop that and gain that skill set. Absolutely correct. However, when you look at the board makeup and going through that body and looking what do we need here in San Juan County, when you step into chaos and contention over land use ordinances, where we're trying to develop and master plan communities such as Spanish Valley, which is kind of an anomaly other than, like I said, Morgan County, who's developing a ski resort around a development. Spanish Valley is critical, and it's critical that we get it right. It's critical that we have the right people there that understand water, can speak to some of the issues and concerns there. It's important that we have those type of people that understand land use so that when we make the decisions as a planning commission or a commission body, we're advised at the best possible advice that we can get from individuals that know what they're doing in that field. Until Spanish Valley becomes a town, and it's in the works right now, and I'm super excited if we can get that to go because it'll relieve a lot of pressure. But until that point in time, you are in essence the decision makers for what takes place in Spanish Valley. And it's important that we have the right people on the planning commission that can fully go through those applications and those requests for zoning changes or new ordinances that we place in that area, that they know fully how to work through the system and make change happen. When For example, we have one application that was recommended to the commission to be approved as a planning commissioner. One of the reasons that we selected him was his ability to come in and offer solutions to our problems. So if we have a concern of water in Spanish Valley from that hotel, this developer already knows, he already has the experience of how to curtail that, how to make a proposal and how to design a development that will conserve water. Solution oriented, and that's what we want of those planning commission members, that they can either place conditions on the use to make sure that it's a win-win for not only the applicant but most importantly for San Juan County, that the suggestions that come from that individual, because of his experience and background in land use, he knows how to fix the problem. Now, is it the best fix? So people could argue. However, he's solution oriented and can bring those because he's been experienced in it. He knows how to fix the problems and the issues when it comes to housing and affordability. Individuals like that know how to develop affordable units and how to work through land use and make sure you have the proper ordinances that point to more affordable housing. And that's one of the things that you'll see in the new ordinances that are drafted, and by law we have to keep this in there, is housing affordability. This is something that we have to have in our ordinances. Well, people that are experienced in land use know how to create an affordable product. It doesn't have to be that attorney that's never developed trying to figure out how and what we should properly state in an ordinance to enact affordable housing in our county. And so that's why we felt that it was critical to have the right people on the planning commission that had the right qualifications. In the land use ordinance, and this is one of the things that that was brought up, is training. There is a requirement for training in here by law. Counties are required to train planning commission members. Unfortunately, or fortunately, either one, we're not of the size that actually has that requirement. So in here, it's the first, second, and third class. We're a fourth class county that has to apply with this law of training. Or you have 5,000 residents outside of the unincorporated area. We're not there. However, in our bylaws, we still do have the training requirement in there, and it's something that we've worked with at a staff level to get our planning commissioners trained. So yes, planning commissioners will have training, and anybody can be trained as a planning commissioner and receive the training, so that they, whether it's the Lorman Institute of Planning or through UAC or through the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns, or the Ombudsman's office offers training. We've already reached out to them, and we tried to enact some training here back on, I believe it was the 24th of February. They came down and presented a training in Grand County. We tried to get on that as well. But with the virtual training, there's a couple more opportunities this year to train our planning commissioners. So even though this law doesn't apply, we feel that it is super important at any level, even if they are qualified land use individuals, that they still know the land use law. There's constant changes every year. You typically see changes to land use law, and so these type of trainings make sure that planning commissions stay on top of that. We've kind of gone through our planning commission and reenacted several changes, obviously similar to how we have our board packets with commissioners. We do the same thing now with planning commission. We push those packets out early with all of the material in there, so planning commissioners are able to come to the table having gone through the packet, read the information. There's staff reports that are submitted in there as well, so that they're just not running the show on their own, that there's some orchestration by staff and a little bit more organization with that. But we're hopeful that we can continue on and make sure that, as we look at what is best and what is really needed for our planning commission, that we can continue in those efforts instead of going backwards in time, and kind of opening this system up for anybody that could come on and apply, that we do have the right people that are making our land use decisions and setting that tone, and making the recommendations to you as a commission body, with a full understanding of what the impacts are, and what it is we're trying to do here in San Juan County. With that, commissioners being said, I think I've touched on all of those that was there. I can't really address the lack of transparency in the interview process other than, hey, look at you, Commissioner Maryboy. Commissioner Maryboy walks in.
Is that him?
Yeah, I think so. I can't tell. He's
hiding behind the mask.
he's either that or we're being robbed. And so, are there any questions?
Well, I think take a look at the time limit on terms. I don't know, maybe to the idea that, I don't know, 2 terms.
So that's what we have now,
4
is
terms,
2 terms. So we allow 2 terms.
with the wording that will, like you said, if the person is disciplined in certain area and we need the technical and the experience knowledge, then we need to continue
Those terms.
yeah,
So,
on that basis.
so are you suggesting taking that out?
No, just expanding on it, be more explicit.
Okay.
I agree with
Yeah.
Willie 100%. My experience and with length of terms, especially with the legislature, my ability to interact with the legislature because of the number of terms I've served has certainly enhanced the position of the county. With more experience and more knowledge that I've gained, I've been able to interact with legislators a lot better the last couple of terms than the first few terms that I served. So I think this idea of limiting the number of terms can backfire on us a little bit, because you get somebody in there who served a few years and just learning the process and getting a hold of, getting a handle on land use, might be a better commissioner, land use commissioner, the longer they serve. And I'm not suggesting that I don't know what I'm suggesting. I just think experience serving on a board really gives you a lot of advantage.
It does.
In helping the county.
Yeah. I think you hear this even at the chapter level as they struggle in their CLEPSIs, their plans. You hear the chapters also like, hey, we need people that know planning.
Yeah.
Planning is so vital, so critical, and so every 8 years you're dropping off somebody that potentially has that experience and that knowledge. We have one planning commissioner that is super strong in FEMA, and he looks in those applications and those developments that come to us, are they thinking about the floodplain? And so that experience, knowing his background, and also he helps us with that. And so, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. The other concern notice that is in the ordinance, whereas E says the bylaws of the San Juan County Planning Commission as set forth in herein. These bylaws are not adopted by these ordinance, do not have the force of law.
Do not have the force of law.
That's,
They're advisory guidelines only.
yeah.
You're the lawful entity for all of the.
What will be the impact if we do insert it into the ordinance? Right now, it's not included in the ordinance.
So change that. I don't think your state code allows for them to have any more jurisdiction over land use than the commission. You're ultimately the ones that decide land use. And so to me, to shift more of that to them.
But isn't this just applying to the planning commission?
Correct. It
the
is.
3 commissioners?
This is just the planning commission.
And they're talking about, should the commission waive, and that's the planning commission, waive, suspend, or otherwise deviate from these bylaws during the course of a meeting, such deviation shall not be grounds for invalidating a hearing held during such meeting or any decision made at such meeting. So what's that telling us, Mac?
I don't know. Let's see.
It's a second language to me, so I don't understand.
No. I know.
Okay, let me try to break that down.
It's a little hard to understand. So while the planning commission is in a meeting, does it say they have the right to deviate
They can.
from these bylaws during the
Yeah.
course of the meeting?
And the commission, planning commission, can waive, suspend, otherwise deviate from these bylaws during the course of a meeting. Such deviation shall not be grounds for invalidating a hearing held during such a meeting or any decisions made at that meeting. So they can change course. So, for example, when you look at the Bluff representative not attending the meetings on there, well, in here, the way that I read this and apply that language to her attendance, they can change from these bylaws within the meeting. They can allow her back in or allow her not to be there, and continue to act as a planning commission.
I think it might be helpful to us if we got some kind of an explanation.
Do you want that one
why
looked
that
at?
language is in there, and an example of where it may be useful to the planning commission itself.
I think for me, I could see that only if they're not following these for verbatim. When I get down here, workshops, field trips, do they go on field trips? They don't go on every field trip, but yet we have that in here. So it allows some flexibility of operating within these bylaws without having to be specific. On here, a quorum of the commission shall consist of 4 members and the affirmative vote of at least 4 voting members in attendance. So it allows the flexibility of working within these bylaws and not being so stringent for each and every act of this
But you
ordinance.
have
And
to
so,
follow state code as far as
You have to follow
open
state code.
meetings,
Correct.
agendas,
and that's all.
public notice, all of those kind
Yep.
of things. You can't deviate
You cannot.
from
Nope.
those because they're in state code. So,
Yeah.
so why would that language be
I don't know.
in Part E?
I can only give you those that
There, it's.
gives you the flexibility, but we can certainly look at that and see
I don't know
if we
need to
can
have
revise that.
Kendall interpret it for us, or
Yeah.
somebody tell us
Yeah.
why that language is in there,
I can have Alex check that.
because it certainly
leaves to some ambiguity in there. I would worry about. I'm not going to tell you what I'm worried about because they might act it, but I can speak to why there's some flexibility with the bylaws.
We might need advice on that.
Yeah.
Good point.
On going down to Roman numeral number 5, candidate qualification. Did I hear you expanded qualification rather than just being a resident and voter of the county?
So in here, this has that the commission candidate shall be, so this is required, shall be a resident and a registered voter of San Juan County with experience or knowledge in land use. So that one is in excess, so that's expounded from what the law requires. All the law requires, state code requires, is that they're a resident and registered voter. All of this from experience or knowledge in land use, knowledge of county and local issues, a good listener, ability to communicate and be analytical. That's all extra to help kind of steer what we would vet the resumes from.
I
And
was
so
thinking maybe putting a language word in there somewhere with I don't know, extensive experience and knowledge or something.
extensive.
I don't know. Mr. Adams?
Well, to me, the state law is the minimum requirement. That's the minimum. You have to be a registered voter and you have to be a resident. That's
Yep.
the minimum. If we want more qualifications of our candidates, we can exceed the minimum with our bylaws. And so we're stating here, we want them to have some knowledge of land use planning. We want them to have, we want them to understand local issues. We want them to be good listeners. We want them to have an ability to communicate. We want them to be analytical. Those are above and beyond the state law of being a resident and being a voter. And I don't see a problem with us exceeding the state requirement to be a planning and zoning commissioner. I could be wrong.
That's absolutely right. When I saw it, so I was on the planning commission for around 25,000 residents up north in Farmington, Utah. That was one of the requirements that they had, is that those individuals on their planning commission have land use or real estate or construction. They wanted that experience. And so all of us that sat on the planning commission had that form of experience. And so it's the same thing that we're trying here. And that's why I brought up the chapters, no different than what the chapters are wanting for their planners, is you want those experienced in land use or construction, development, engineer, architect. It's the same thing. They give the best advice. They're in that world. They understand it. And so because of that, that's why you see that language there.
So that would just remain?
I wouldn't go for extensive, more extensive than what we have there. I think that may be a little difficult to get beyond that type of experience.
Well, in the past, and Kenneth can attest to this, we've sometimes had to go out and recruit people to be on our various boards in the county. People aren't always that interested in volunteering their time. They're trying to make a living, their time's valuable to them. And so some of these boards, maybe not necessarily planning, but some of these boards, we've had to go out and really talk people into it and recruit them because we knew they had some qualifications that qualified them to sit on that board. Now, right now, there's a lot of interest in a couple of our boards in the county. We get multiple applications, which is great. I think that's wonderful. So to help the interviewing process, we've tried to put some qualifications on the candidates. We want them to have some experience. We want them to be knowledgeable in the area that the board is working in. But it's not going to always be the case. Sometimes people are reluctant to serve on boards, and sometimes we have vacancies on our boards that we just can't fill because people aren't volunteering and we haven't been able to go out and recruit them. So we're lucky on this board. We've got a number of applicants, but we want them to be to understand what they're volunteering for. If they have some expertise, and so
it was a struggle, and it's always been a struggle. Maybe another way of approaching this is, just put it out to the public and let's see the response, and maybe from their response we can analyze exactly where they want to be and how they want it, and so that way we can maybe kind of compile things together to where we can make it applicable to work for everybody. That might be another way of doing it, because like Bruce said, it's been really hard trying to have people come forward to get involved in these things. So that might be another way of approach it, is just give it out to the public and let's see what the response are, and whatever the input they have, we can compile those together and make it work.
well, in this ordinance, we have an interview process. When people, and we've had enough people apply that there's been more people than positions open, and so we've had an interview process. And Matt kind of explained that. We had 3 positions open, and we had 5 people, maybe even 6, apply for the position, Kenneth. We went through an interview process. Willie was the representative from the commission in the interview process. And so they did exactly what you're suggesting with planning and zoning. So, and I think it's a good process. I agree with you. I think it works good.
If that's the case, then we have an idea exactly where we need to be and where we want them to be. So from the state policies, and we have to have some kind of a recommended policy in place that will work with whatever it is that's going to be put together for the people. Maybe it's about time that we just reach into our bag and see what policies we can find and apply to it and bring it, because the process of hearing the community's already been through, and then you guys went to the interview. Now, only thing we need to do is we have an idea what they want, and what we have in our toolbox is a couple of ranches, and the ranches that will work to make it work is what we can put together.
Okay. So, you want to allow public input?
I would.
So how would that happen? So we would get a list of all the applicants that are applying for the vacancies, and you want me just to advertise it to the public, and the public makes a recommendation, and then you as commissioners make a recommendation? How do you avoid the public clamor? How do you avoid, so that there were multiple emails that I received from one individual who contacted like a mayor, the Democrat chair, saying, "Hey, we need liberals to apply and be on the planning commission." And that was all they were looking for, was we need a liberal to apply to be on the planning commission. Do you know of anybody? And there was email communication went back for, well, no, this individual will be liberal. And that was the whole thing. And that was that individual, the public, was literally just trying to stack the planning commission with liberal people. Well, what does that mean? You know, I could be liberal in thought, nature, act, but do they have the experience for land use? Because that's what we need. When we have the lawsuits and the land use appeals that we've been going through for the past 2 years, is like, how do we avoid that? Well, you avoid that by making sure that you have a tight process. And I think the most important thing that you always have to remember is you as commissioners represent the public. You're their representative body. And by having a commissioner always on that interview process, we're hoping that commissioner is doing that they're overseeing this whole entire process on behalf of the people that they were elected to represent. And so I would hate to put it out to all of the public. You see, when you touch the public's hot buttons, and you'll see a big push, a big outcry of a lot of public feedback, and a lot of dissident in our decisions. And then you see other times where the public, they're really not even paying attention. So we push it out to the public and you don't get a lot of attention. Well, what does that mean? And then the next time you do, you receive a lot. Well, no, don't appoint this person to this body. Then I worry on the flip side as well. Now, are you kind of defaming that individual in the public? Are you letting the public kind of go through and say, if it's a business owner of one of these areas, and now everybody comes out, public outcry, no, don't put that person on the planning commission, then you cost him money through his business. Well, what does that look like from a public outcry? I would hesitate to go and allow the public. We can certainly put the applications on, but I think the vetting, you're the elected body, you're elected to represent the people. And so hopefully they will let you be that for them. And so I would hesitate to go to a public process to select your candidates.
Mr. Adams?
Well, one thing that I've noticed, and I'm not trying to be rude, but a lot of times public comes to the commission and makes comments about a process or about a commissioner or something that's very uninformed. They're here with an emotional issue, not one that's based on fact. And they make a comment about something we're doing or not doing or whatever, and they really don't have the correct information to be making that comment. You know, for instance, somebody might come and say, why are you allowing this to happen when we have so little water in our county? And I think that person might be assuming that we control the water. The three commissioners control the water. And by state code, the state of Utah is responsible for the water. So for instance, if you need a well drilled on your property so you can build a house and water your horses, you don't apply to the San Juan County Commission for that well permit. You apply to the state of Utah, Board of Water Resources or whatever, and they issue the permit for so many gallons or so many acre feet for you to use that water for your purposes. And so many times when people come to the commission, they want us to approve or disapprove a project based on water, when in reality, we don't control water. The state controls all the water. So that's just an example of misinformation that sometimes the public will have, or misunderstanding that they might have, and they think we can do things that we really don't have the legal right to do. So I think we got to be a little bit careful about just allowing the public to help us make the decision. We need to make the decision, you know, based on facts.
Analytical.
Huh?
Analytical.
Yeah, analytical. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And more importantly, so I agree wholeheartedly with all that, but you also, I think the staff component comes in here as well. You know, staff is part of that interview process, and hopefully they're the most in tune with what the needs are on the planning commission and what each member brings, and are trying to look at that balance of what is needed. Like I said, with the special service district member on there, having somebody that understands water at an underground level aquifer and being able to speak to those issues is important here in San Juan County. And so we have that representative in there. But then like I mentioned, you have that FEMA representative, you know, that understands the floodplains and looks for that. The representative from Bluff, she was strong. She was one that protected the environment. So when you had a development, she was strong about making sure that the environment was taken care of, that water issues were taken care of. That was her mantra. That was the things that she liked. And so your staff will know each of those members of what their key points are. And so now you add this public selection process. Well, the public's not going to know, as far as a board, what we need to balance that planning commission out, what your memberships are, what they're tipped heavily towards or the opposite. You know, your staff is a key component. That's why they're part of that interview process of making sure that we're balancing across the board. And I think part of this is there's got to be some public trust in this process. And we have to earn it as staff as well. And I can't really say that we've done that in the past, but hopefully with the processes and as we continue to try to improve things here, that trust will start to be earned. But believe me, as a staff level, we're not trying to stack this planning commission in any area other than having qualified people that can give us the information that we need to avoid the lawsuits, avoid the appeals, and to make sure that our planning and zoning ordinances are tight, that and according to what you guys want, you know, that they're able to enact that at a planning commission level. To have that selected by the public entirely, it doesn't make sense on there. You lose part of that.
Mm-hmm. The last one, faithful attendance and performance.
Yeah, that one we talked about during that selection. I think that one needs to be revised.
Yeah.
I think
Either under the chair of the duties
yeah,
should be worded in terms of the notification or
yeah.
the number of absent would be indicated.
I think so. There's I think there needs to be a number. You know, if you miss, say for example, 3 meetings, you know, then 3 consecutive meetings,
Yeah.
then you need to be off. And so, and I would hate to put that on the chair just because I've seen how
A notice would be coming from
staff.
from the chair.
Yeah.
If the staff, then whatever action
Yeah.
is up to the commission.
Okay. Yeah, and we talked about that as we went through the interview
Kendall,
process.
we get a question sometime today.
I just have a phone call coming in and I'll be right back. Give me just a second.
About that first part, you know, we had the very first part that we were talking about,
Yeah.
this one right here, we can ask him to help interpret that.
Those are my comments and possible changes.
Okay.
But as far as the having to be transparent side, unless you have the interview committee come out with I think it's all covered to me. That only the dates, the sequence of dates of submittal of letter of interest, and also November commencement of notification for vacancy. I don't know. I haven't seen. It was done in December,
Mm-hmm.
as I understood.
Yep. December 10th is when we notified.
So, I have no idea how to
Yeah. And
how
it's,
to address
You've gotta
it.
have
Yeah.
a cutoff too, you've gotta say, this is when
Yeah.
the application process ends.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and that kinda needs to be a hard stop.
right.
You know, if you have people applying after the
Yeah.
deadline, then I just,
But those are already out there.
They are.
December 31st.
Yeah, so there was, and it's not a hard deadline, it's a soft. It's like all applications should be received until December 31st, or that it's open. So I had it at that 5 o'clock, so I had that language on there. But I also, knowing San Juan County, left it open. The deadline to apply is at 5 p.m. December 31st, or until the positions are filled. So it
Unless
still
the
continues
positions are
on.
filled, that gives
Continues
them
on.
an open door.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So
Uh,
anybody can continue to apply
Yeah.
for Bluff. We haven't made a decision on Bluff or any of them really. And so anybody can continue to apply for these positions until
Yeah.
you as a commission fill them. And so even though I put that deadline on there to try to trigger kind of what Commissioner Adams says, you want to have a hard stop.
Yeah.
You know, and what I did is I weighed the fact that I had 5 qualified applicants. Like, okay, Anne Marie, let's set up an interview, contact Commissioner Gray Eyes. You were the one that was designated in that January meeting to set on this interview panel when we discussed the boards. And we commenced with the process. And so I don't know how much transparent you can be other than the fact that they want to see all of the applicants' applications in the packet. We can certainly post that. To me, I felt it was only important to the public to see those that were actually recommending, because then they could go through and read those resumes and see why we're recommending those. And so,
well, if you don't do that, when do you start the interview process if you don't have a deadline? You know, when do you start the interview process if you're gonna allow people to keep applying after the deadline? You know, you want that deadline so you can start interviewing and make the appointment so they can go to work. So,
Yeah. Well, you know, if there's a deadline, there's a deadline.
yeah.
Anything that you do, you gotta abide by it just like everybody else.
yeah, if you're gonna run for county commissioner, what's the deadline? Lyman?
March 4th, 5 p.m.
March 4th, you don't have your application in by March 4th?
You're gone.
It comes in the 5th or the 6th or the 7th? You're not considered.
Or open until filled. You don't get that option.
Yeah, I know that option.
But we do. That's what we allowed here. It's open until filled. We can't do that for commission races.
So,
Imagine that. Open until filled. We can't get anybody. would be in trouble. Well, commissioners, any other?
Well,
Kendall, yeah.
I gave him that question. We had a
Translation of that little
question.
form?
We had a question on this one, Kenneth.
Yeah, the translation to that, for the wording.
Yeah, the wording here, I'm not understanding that very good, so
Yeah.
he's gonna explain it to us.
For herding sheep?
Herding sheep. Is that what he's out there doing? Getting some mutton for lunch?
Man, that drive took a toll on me. Oh,
How was back east that
How
day?
long?
day and all night.
How many hours?
Shoot, I didn't even count because we had to stop here and there. To make matters worse, the GPS doesn't keep you on a freeway. It takes you off, and there's places where I drove about 30 miles on gravel road between.
Oh, no
trucks.
way, really?
Well, good thing you knew how to do that, huh?
That's it. And all of a sudden, around about 3 o'clock in the morning, I ended up out of Tucumcare. Got back on a freeway and sleepy all the way out, and tried to sleep in Albuquerque. Couldn't. Took off again.
It's a long ways. It's probably more than 24-hour drive, isn't it?
It's a long drive. I didn't even notice on the way out. But coming back, every stop sign, it seemed like I knew where they were.
Okay. Is this one here? Right. Okay. I'm talking to Alex because
And
we've never seen it before. So give me a minute. We're trying to.
Well, if you can't do it today, we could get it another time. I mean,
We've got to bring him back as
Yeah,
a.
we're gonna have
a
to, because
draft.
we didn't draft this,
Yeah.
so I don't know what it means.
well, do you have the whole ordinance? I can give you the
If
whole
give it to me,
ordinance.
that'd be helpful.
I can send it to you.
Here's the whole ordinance
Okay,
that we're looking at.
it makes it more helpful.
That's the one
Yeah.
that we have some question on, and if you can't give it to us right now, then whenever you can, that's fine.
Okay, I'll try to. I'm gonna step out and see
Well-
what I can work on. But
Yeah,
give me-
I think we're wrapped up
That's
primarily, but I think there's some modifications that we've got to make in here.
Okay.
So
Non-navy
if we
sheep.
review that item, that
Non-Iggy
piece in there. So in
Okay.
between
Yeah.
now and the next commission meeting that we have
Yeah.
that on there. Does that work?
Go back to the interpretation.
Back to
There you
drawing,
go.
go back to the drawing board, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll look at that when we bring the changes that you've suggested to the commission meeting. We'll have an answer on that, whether we keep it or strike it.
Okay.
Other than that, that's all. Unless you have any other questions or concerns and
I
direction.
can kind of let you know a little bit about what's been going on in the legislature if you want to know.
Okay, give us an update.
Well, the legislature ends this Friday. They're done with their 45 days. So they're getting right down to the end, and this is when a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of monkey business happens.
Like always.
Yeah,
There's-
last day, what is that? Last call
Yeah,
through
they have a lot of appropriation requests this year because they have a lot of money. They have really a lot of money. And one of the requests that we had in San Juan County was a trail system down in Indian Creek, down by Newspaper Rock. A lot of people like to go down there and they like to ride their bikes and do some hiking and stuff. So, the state, recreation, and public lands have been advocating for a trail, a walking trail to be built down in there, and it required an appropriation of $750,000 We've been advocating for that all during the session, and at some point, the Executive Appropriation Committee meets and they rank all of the requests that have come in and all of the fiscal notes to all the bills.
Uh-huh.
And they did that last week. They came up with the list. The list is very important because if you don't make the list, you're probably not gonna get funded. And so our Indian Creek Trails request didn't make the list. So it's probably not gonna get funded. Now, the road from Navajo Mountain to Oljeto, Hinkins had requested $4 million for, was it planning or environmental?
Environmental, the EIS.
Environmental.
Yeah, the environmental statement.
Yeah.
And when they went through that, they cut that request from 4 million to 2 million. So that request made the list, but only for $2 million.
Yeah.
But it's on the list, so maybe, maybe we can get part of the money this year and do part of the thing and then part of the money next year. I don't know how they want to handle it. But that one made the list. We had requested 17 million to remodel our jail and do some additions and stuff on it.
Uh-huh.
So
And
far,
it didn't make the
has
list.
not made the list.
It
Yeah.
didn't make the list. What was the other one, Matt?
And another one we were tracking is the USU new
Campus
building down at
In
Monument Valley.
Yeah.
That one I haven't seen whether or not that's making the list.
Yeah,
It's in the
I don't know if
governor's request for appropriation for USU.
May.
There is the food bank that is also in a request for Monument Valley and Montezuma Creek
Uh-huh.
as well. That's in there that we're
And it
hoping.
made the list.
Yeah, we're hoping that
It made the
those
list.
will make that.
To put a food bank in Montezuma Creek, Monument Valley, and a warehouse in Blanding.
Uh-huh.
And that one has made the list. The other thing that I've been working really hard on is this SB 49 of Winterton's. It's called the Film Incendi Bill. And we have a film incentive process in Utah, but it's capped at $8 million. So if somebody comes here and makes a movie in San Juan County,
Uh-huh.
they spend $100 million, then the film commission will reimburse them.
At 8
I don't
million.
remember this percent, but they can get a rebate if they spend the money. It's after the fact. They spend the money in the county. They stay in rooms, buy gas, eat in restaurants, do their business here, and spend the money here. Then they'll get a rebate back from the film commission. But up to this point, that $8 million gets eaten up really fast.
Yeah.
And so a lot of films don't come here. For instance, you probably never heard of this, but there was a film called Yellowstone, and they were filming it in Utah,
Uh-huh.
and they reached the cap, so they moved the movie to Montana and finished spending all the money in Montana rather than Utah. So we've been advocating in SB 49 to lift the cap, and it had a $12 million fiscal note to it. So
It must be the same group.
we were told that it wasn't going to make the list, but when the list came out, it was on the list. It made the list.
Uh-huh.
So now we're trying to get enough people to vote for it in the House to make it veto proof, because Governor Cox doesn't like the bill, even though he says he wants things to happen in rural Utah.
Uh-huh.
He's indicated he doesn't like the bill. We don't know if he doesn't like it enough that he'll veto it, or whether he'll go ahead and sign it. So we put together a letter from 67 commissioners in the state of Utah, send it to him saying we support the bill. we want this bill to pass. When Costner was here 3 weeks ago and met with me and Mac in the commission room here, he said he had bought the rights to 5 John Wayne movies. And he was going to remake those movies in San Juan County if SB 49 passes. And he has another bill. We went down to Bluff and looked. We looked up the river from Sand Island up towards Bluff.
Yeah.
And he really likes that area for a new movie he wants to start in September called Horizons.
Uh-huh.
But again, Horizons won't come unless SB 49 passes.
Yeah.
So I've been working with the film commission really hard up there, and now we made the list. They found the money to fund it, the 12 million, but we got to get enough votes in the House that the governor can't veto it. So that's what we're kind of working on right now with that one.
It must be the same group that kept the trust fund.
Yeah, it might be. So what other ones have we been working on, Mac? I can't.
Because those are the money side of it. Obviously, there's bills that we continue to monitor. The the Greenbelt rollback.
Right.
That's a huge concern of ours. Is
And the CAFO bill.
yeah, the CAFO is
The CAFO
dairy.
bill, confined feeding operations. They want to take away all the authority of the county to permit and manage those, and put it on the State Department of Ag. And that's where Kelly Pearson works now, State Department of Ag.
Uh-huh.
And he says that they don't have the people to monitor that, or that it needs to stay in the hands of the county. So we've been fighting that one a little bit. And what else, Mac?
Those have kind of been the biggest ones most recently. The
Greenbelt
open
rollback,
meetings has been a super big concern with us on kind of the change, how they wanted to have public comments. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to have to address here pretty quick is we really do need to have a bigger policy regarding our public comments, or a lot of counties are doing away with them altogether.
Yeah.
And what that does is it pushes the public to come directly to you. And if they have a comment or a concern, to address it to the elected official, but don't come in and try to grandstand during a public comment period and, make all of this ruckus. Take it offline. There's also been some concerns with that process and violations of the Open Meetings Act, where we've turned to members of the public and just opened it back up to them. In essence, we've opened and created a public hearing, but yet we didn't properly notify it as a public hearing. When you ask for comments from the impacted area, that is in essence a public hearing, and we didn't advertise it as a public hearing. So that decision could be null and void when we do things like that. And so, speaking to USIP, there's just do away with it. Why have the public comments? Why put yourself in that position? So that's something that we'll have to look at again. But before we make a motion to adjourn here, or ask for a motion to adjourn, just some direction on the process, what you want to see now. I'll go through and make the changes.
Did Kendall have it to come up with anything yet?
So, Alex and I, that's what I was talking to him on the phone to see if he had seen it. And we will work with Matt now for
Okay.
this meeting to try to figure that out, because neither one of us are entirely sure what whoever wrote it meant by paragraph. So we would like a chance to
Okay.
And we thought you wrote it.
it was not me.
This was not, So do you want, one of the suggestions, comments is, do we remand these back to the planning commission and have the planning commission look through the bylaws? It's kind of their rules. I don't know. If I told my kids, hey kids, you make up the rules, you make up your own curfew, it's not necessarily a good idea at all times. And so I don't know if you just do you want me to make the changes? I can email the changes out to you and we can bring this back to the commission meeting. Or do you want to bring the appointments back? Do I hold additional? Obviously, we've got to have interviews for the Bluff vacancy. We can schedule those going forward. Just looking for a little direction from you how you want to see this next.
Did we
Yeah.
not follow our policy when we interviewed for those other spots?
Absolutely, we did.
Why wouldn't we go ahead with those? Willie, you were on the interview.
Yeah.
You were satisfied with it, weren't you?
Yes, in terms the recommendation, the interview was fine.
Yeah.
The recommendation, we didn't all agree, to me, but I think the ultimate decision will be up to the commission, so that's my understanding.
Do you want me to bring that back as an item, an action item on there to appoint? I'll just use that same language. Put the resumes on there to
So we
appoint those
tabled
members.
appointments, is that right?
Yeah, so the individuals
You
that
wanted them tabled.
the individuals that were recommending were Sheik Khan of Spanish Valley, Lloyd Wilson to continue, and he would fill that special service district, and then Trent Schaefer to be reappointed as the at-large.
And Trent and Lloyd have a lot of experience.
They've been
They-
super
They
helpful.
kind of know how things run.
Yes, they do.
And Lloyd helped install a lot of the water meters and stuff down in the valley and knows that water system.
Yep. And so if you want, I can bring that as a business action item with the bylaws.
Yeah. Okay.
Which
Is
one
that-
do you think? Was that a yes? Bring those individuals back to reappoint or appoint
For
From the interview,
for the commission meeting,
next meeting,
yeah.
for the next commission meeting? Okay.
I thought you were talking about this meeting.
No, we can't. We didn't put it on the agenda. And so I'll bring those back to reappoint. And then also the
With the
bylaws.
Modifications on the bylaws.
Yep, with the bylaws, and we'll have those two action items.
Oh,
All right. All right. Thanks, commissioners.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the work meeting.
okay. Motion made by Mr. Adams and second by Mr. Mayor Boyd to adjourn the meeting. Work session at this time. Time is 10:52 a.m. That's all.
There you go.